So this is going to be an experience for me. This is going to be the first time I'm going to be putting together a PC case. Yep, I said that right. InWin sent over their new Airforce PC case, which is flat pack. Touting a build your own PC chassis, the Airforce takes aim for a newer DIY experience. When you think about InWin as a company, it's definitely for the one-off PC cases. In typical InWin style, the Airforce is no exception. The Airforce is a 19-piece modular design, to which I have the Justice White Airforce. Phantom Black is also available. Let's get to building. So now that I have built in the InWin Airforce, let's talk about it. Right off the bat, it's very Lego-like. The colors, the shape of the front and top panels just reminds me heavily of my childhood. The approach to this DIY PC building experience is quite interesting and innovative at the same time. This opens the door to different levels of customization that the customer can take advantage of. If you want to take the blue and red panels on one side, like I did, or you can mix and match. One thing I tried was putting the I/O panel on the bottom for what I thought was easier access. Well, I realized that I would have a plethora of extra cabling from said front I/O cable, so I reverted back to the top orientation. Speaking of front I/O, which consists of a USB 3.1 Type-C port, headphone and mic jacks, 2 USB 3.0 Type-A ports, activity lights, and a decently sized yellow power button. Inside the Airforce, it's actually quite spacious. Nothing really to get in the way, just a really open design. Now, having an open design per se isn't necessarily a bad thing if executed correctly. Just a couple of things that stood out that I found a bit peculiar. Firstly, with the hard drive disk mounting. I pretty much always use M.2 SSD anyways. Very rarely will I ever use a 2.5-inch SSD, let alone a 3.5-inch HDD. According to InWin, you can mount up to 6 drives, but I can only figure out how to mount two 2.5-inch SSDs vertically on the wall with 3 full-size HDDs in the 2 included drive mounts, 2 on one drive stacked on top of each other, meant to be mounted on the bottom of the case, where I mounted a 120mm fan. The other thing was the PCI slot covers. They literally are the only things that are black in the build besides the I/O cables. I think maybe having them painted blue, red, or yellow would have matched the whole aesthetic better. Lastly, cable grommets. Having cable grommets would have done wonders to hide additional cabling. I'm also wondering if InWin plans on releasing any other colored parts to purchase, so customers can take their build one step further. Design-wise, I think the semi-open design really is something of an acquired taste. The Airforce is an ATX-sized mid-tower case that can fit eATX motherboards 12 by 13 inches, or for my friends on the other side of the pond, 305 by 330 millimeters. To the contrary, you could put a mini ITX motherboard in the Airforce, but it's gonna look stupid. Don't do it. Comprising mostly of ABS plastic, the Airforce at first seemed flimsy, but became more stable once everything was assembled. So one thing I did for this build, because I could, is put a fan in the bottom of the Airforce for added air intake. Normally, I wouldn't even bother since most PC cases don't have this option as it's covered up by a PSU shroud. But the Airforce opted to do away with the PSU shroud. I did, however, manage to fit 8 120mm fans, specifically InWin's Luna AL120 ARGB fans, and I have to say, these fans really do push a lot of air. On one hand, airflow really shouldn't be a problem, but at the expense of noise. Having all those vents and places for air to make noise is definitely a thing. One thing I am kind of puzzled on is including dust filters on the top and front panels. Why? The side tempered glass panels don't fully extend to the sides of the Airforce to create a seal to keep the dust out anyways. I guess it's nice if you have little ones that put their fingers in places they shouldn't. InWin also sent over their BR36 AIO, as well as a triple pack of their Luna AL120 fans for this build, so I mounted the BR36 to the roof of the Airforce without much trouble. I also could have mounted the BR36 in the front as well, but I chose to have fresh air intake instead. Now, I have to say, having only support for 120mm fans is a pretty big miss here. 140mm fans would have allowed for a quieter noise profile while offering great cooling potential. Another norm nowadays is the inclusion of a vertical GPU mount, which I don't see here. Another miss. The backside of the motherboard tray offers very little in terms of cable management, leaving me to not feel so great about the end result aesthetically. Finally, a PSU shroud, again, would have cleaned up the cabling in the bottom section massively. These are all things I would have thought to be a given these days. Moving over to temps, I have an AMD Ryzen 9 3900X on an X570 Aorus Master. Team Group's T-Force Excalibur DDR4 3600 16GB kit, a Kingston Fury Renegade PCIe 4.0 1TB M.2 SSD, InWin's BR36 360mm AIO, an NVIDIA RTX 2080 Super Founders Edition, EVGA's P2 750W Platinum PSU with a black cable set, with the ambience being at 16C, and Arctic MX5 thermal paste was used. So temps and noise, the Airforce did okay. I performed 3 tests, each with a different fan speed, 100%, 75%, and 50%. And you know what? all those results netted in a margin of error, meaning those Luna AL120 fans didn't have to spin at the full 1800 RPM really to make a difference. The real differentiator here was the noise profile. At 50% fan speed, it was 3 decibels lower than at 75% fan speed. That means running the fans at 75% fan speed would be twice as loud as running them at 50%, not to mention negligible drops in temps. So what does the InWin Airforce offer? Well, it offers a new way to build the traditional PC chassis, but in an oddly fun way. Doing a little Googling, I found the Airforce on Amazon for 210 smackers. Can you find a case that competes with the InWin Airforce? Absolutely. But can you find one that is flat pack that lets you build it? That seems to be the burning question here. I guess what gets me is all the little things. All those little things add up to an overall good experience. However, the case does have some clear drawbacks compared to others. Okay guys, I'm Ryan with Extreme Hardware. If you don't mind, and if you found this review helpful, please drop a like, subscribe while you're at it. I will see you in the next one.